Out of all the teams remaining in the Premier League, Salah's Game Week 2 opponents Bournemouth conceded the most goals in the whole league last season. As for Haaland's Game Week 2 opponents, they conceded the least amount of goals in the whole league. So I've built a draft that I think you're going to like. We've got the option to captain Salah against Bournemouth at Anfield, but it's still solid. Building from the back, I've currently got Steele, and I'll definitely be going for a 4.5 mil goalkeeper. I think they'll get plenty of points per million. I have considered Flecken because Brentford's defence was decent last season, and it's not the pre-season that's put me off, it's blank game week 18. I know it's quite far away and I might have wildcarded by then, but ideally I would like to dead end into blank game week 18 where Brentford and City blank, and then wildcard in game week 19. I have also considered Johnston. Palace's defence was quite decent on the back end of last season. I'm not sure if they'll keep it up though because at the start of the season they weren't too good. As an Evertonian, I'm not considering Pickford because our defence has been poor for the past couple of seasons, and until we see improvements for a decent amount of time, I won't be touching them with a barge pole. I've put Turner in as my backup goalkeeper. Whilst this video has been recorded, Forest are strongly linked with him and he's only 4 mil. So 4 mil for a backup goalkeeper that's playing is an absolute bargain. If they don't get him, I'll probably get Hennessy, who also plays for Forest. If that's the case, then there's probably a 50% chance of him playing. Moving on to the defence, I've got Chilwell and I think he's the best option from Chelsea at the moment. They've got favourable fixtures from game week 2 till game week 8. I don't think it's worth spending a free transfer after just one game week. Just start with him now. I do like Reece James as well, but he's a bit too much of an injury risk. There's no doubt Chelsea will improve this season. I think there's plenty of value in the team. You could even get Colwill, who's 4.5 mil. He's not fully nailed, but if he does get that spot, then he's definitely worth it. Next up is Gabriel. He's at the top of the pecking order in my defence. 5 mil for an Arsenal defender is an absolute steal, especially when he's got attacking threat as well. And lastly in my first team, instead of a Stupinian, I've gone for Botman and Henry as a rotation pair. If you've watched my defensive rotations video, you'll know why. Basically, it doesn't matter when you wildcard in. Newcastle and Brentford rotate perfectly right up until the first wildcard, even if it's in game week 19. Plus, Newcastle conceded the least amount of goals in the whole league last season, and Brentford's defence was strong last season as well. I still think Stupinian's one of the best defenders in the game. I think he'll do really well in the first 3 game weeks, but after that, I don't like Brighton's fixtures for quite a while, and I am a fixture man. Of course I could sell him, but I don't like spending free transfers on defenders because there's less upside, especially after just 3 game weeks. Another option is to bench him in the difficult game weeks. The problem is, I wouldn't like to bench a £5 million defender in multiple game weeks when I can invest that full million into my first team. And like I said, I am a fixture man, so I don't like owning players for difficult fixtures. I'd rather have this defensive rotation where there's a favourable fixture nearly every single game week. I've got Baldock as my £4 million defender. What I like about him is that he doesn't blank in game week 2. However, Luton and Burnley both blank in that game week. So if you're going to pick 2 £4 million defenders, I wouldn't get one from Burnley and Luton because you're going to have no coverage in game week 2. I'd pair one with Baldock. Moving on to midfield, I know we've already discussed Salah, but if you're going to bring him into your team, I would commit to captain him in game week 1, otherwise his points per million aren't going to be worth it. If you fancy Haaland against Newcastle more than you fancy Salah against Bournemouth, that's fine, just go without Salah and spread the funds. But if you are in favour of Salah, we do technically benefit from captaincy. We get 2 Salahs and 1 Haaland. That's instead of 2 Haalands and no Salah. Next up are 2 8.5 mil midfielders, Bruno Fernandes and Saka. I think both of these have been very underpriced. They're both penalty takers and they're both nailed. I think these two will strongly benefit from the new Premier League rule. I have made a video on this, but briefly, the referees are going to start adding on the right amount of time at the end of games. The ball was in play for an average of 55 minutes per match last season, but the ball's going to be in play a lot more this season because there's no benefit to time wasting, and we're going to have added time that's similar to the World Cup in double figures. Players like these who are likely to play 90 minutes are now even better options than what they were anyway. My last 2 midfielders are Mitoma and Mbeumo. I like that price point. I also like the 3-5-2 formation because there's plenty of options in midfield. I don't think there's anything between March and Mitoma. That's just a Brighton midfielder slot. As for Mbeumo, he's got penalty duties and he might be playing out of position up front with Tony being absent. I did consider Eze, but I prefer Mitoma as a short-term option and Mbeumo as a long-term option. As you can see, I've not got Rashford in midfield. Obviously, I could get rid of Salah and spread the cash, but I really like him for captaincy in game week 2. I could downgrade a player by £500,000, but I prefer Bruno and Saka on penalty duties with higher expected minutes. Obviously, I could downgrade Salah after game week 2 captaincy, but I don't want to go booking in any free transfers. Up front, Haaland goes without saying. From a 4.5 mil forward, nobody stands out, so I've got Yui Joe, if that's how you pronounce it. He's got the highest expected minutes on FPL review. The last forward slot's a bit of a nightmare with Jesus being injured. I had Nkunku in there, then he got injured as well. Whilst this video's being recorded, I haven't received an update on him, so currently I've got Jackson, and if Nkunku remains sidelined, then Jackson's probably going to get more minutes. I'll be honest, I think Watkins is the safest option. Because of his minutes, he might be on penalty duties, although I don't think he deserves it. He's only scored 4 and missed 6. I think Tielemans should be taking them realistically, but Jackson's got the highest upside, especially if you look at Chelsea's fixtures from game week 2 till game week 8. There will be upgrades to this team from now until the deadline. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss my game week 1 team selection video.